How long have you been a priest?
I have been a priest for, oh gosh, I think it's over 26 years. I was an ordained priest in February 1995 in Manhattan at the parish of St. James, Madison Avenue. I can look back and I can see that the calling was growing, the sense of vocation was deepening, but I was not so conscious of it. It was probably more an unconscious process, and other people had to point it out to me. And that happened in various ways and stages. People started saying to me that they thought I would become a priest, but I couldn't see that at the time. But I started doing everything that actually what a priest would do.
Rather than a call that you felt like clearly and distinctly, it was something that grew out of your pastoral work and of group discernment, help to acknowledge a gift you had and you were not aware of.
I remember distinctly saying to my parish priest, I'm not worthy. And his reply was, so? He was basically saying, well, right, none of us are worthy, but we may be called, you know, that God uses us, and maybe you're being called to be used in that way. And it doesn't matter if you're worthy or not, you know, you're being called by God. And if so, the only way to know is to submit myself. And interestingly, at first I thought, well, I'll submit myself. And if the church doesn't hear it, well, then I'll accept that and I'll figure out how else I'm going to serve him. But the more I went through the process, the more I felt it so strongly that it was right. That
I've been a priest for slightly less than a year. It's been a rumbling thing for many years. I've always worked for the church in one way or another, but as a layperson until a couple of years ago.
You worked for the church for a number of years. So why deciding to start working for the church as a priest?
It's in part because working for the church as a layperson is a hard and not always very rewarding or appreciated thing to do. I was 40 last year, and I'm a different person at 40 than I was at 25. I'm more self-confident. I know myself better. I have a better set of skills. And I might have been a dreadful priest when I was 25 in lots of ways. And I'd be I'm hoping that I'm a better one now. In any other normal job, you would assess somebody's experience, their knowledge, and their aptitudes as to whether they were suitable for this role. And I'm slightly for normalizing priesthood from that point of view. And I think that there might have been some ticks against some of those, but not many of them when I was 25. At the end of the day, there's a hard job to be done, which we need to be competent, we need to be good, we need to be great at. Churches can get themselves into difficult positions when there's an over-romanticized view of priesthood. That means that some of those sharper questions about how is my service building up the body of Christ in concrete ways, where that question isn't enough to the fore.
What is the most important aspect of your ministry as an ordained priest?
When I think about Sunday morning, I love Sunday morning. I think that being present, I just get emotional thinking about it, but being present, you know, at the altar and with the community of faithful, being able to share the sacraments together, to be able to celebrate the Eucharist on their behalf, and to together be enriched by the presence of Christ in word and sacrament, and to be able to be a part of guiding and teaching in that, and then sending out. Building of relationships, you know, when someone new comes through the door, and being able to meet them and welcome them and gather them around the table, and then find out about their life and see how they can be drawn into this community. Or it may be about bringing someone in through baptism or through marriage, or you know, through the sadness of preparing them for burial. All those aspects of life are so important. The pastoral care, the visiting, the connecting, I guess the building of the community, but it's all focused on Sunday morning, and then going out into the world and keeping that connection going through the week.
A deep spiritual leadership is at the core of priesthood when it's at work within a parochial context. We're living at a time of institutional tumult and the need for organizational change within the life of the church, where that spiritual leadership is needed as it hasn't been for a long time. Yet it's important to be able to take that step back to see the big picture. It is the church celebrating the Eucharist. One of the very positive things about a high aesthetic, a high sense of ritual, is that it does cloak the individual within the liturgy of the community. So whilst it is me presiding, it is also in another and more important way not me presiding. And the more that I can disappear into that, the better.
Do you see clericalism as a danger?
The unique role of a priest is really important, and I wouldn't ever want to denigrate that. I do think clericalism can be a problem. We can all hide behind it in a way that's unhelpful sometimes. I think it can sometimes lead to a feeling of us and them. Often it probably comes from a place of insecurity.
Where my bishop and others have done a lot of work on a healthy culture, relationships between bishops and clergy and laity, an understanding of what we're here for that is rooted in the whole people of God. When that doesn't happen, there can be a sectarianism that develops almost for understandable reasons of survival and self-defense and protection, when one ends up having to boost one's own morale. And I guess that I see an excessive clericalism as something that might emerge from that.
Is the best antidote to clericalism?
Sometimes a sense of humor, sometimes simply being honest with oneself and with others, and really humility. I think we should have enough self-confidence to live out our priestly ministry without having to sort of use clericalism, I suppose, as a prop. I believe it's important to wear a collar and to be seen as a priest in the world, because you never know when that actually opens up a conversation, which is a form of witness. So
I'm conscious that where the two of us are sat here in black with absurd white collars, I think it is hard to not have a set-asideness. I think one needs to be really careful about it, how much the visual and the aesthetic communicates latently, but that shouldn't stop us from trying. It's good to have our pretensions and all of our human rituals punctured by that sense that we're called to something that is quite different from what we end up creating.
What does it mean for you to be a woman and to be a priest?
So in a sense, coming back to England, I did feel in some ways I was coming back in time, and that I did encounter, for the first time perhaps, men who didn't accept my priesthood, either because from the more Anglo-Catholic wing of the church, or from the very reformed wing of the church. And what was so interesting was they were so different in every other way, but in the one place they agreed was that I wasn't a priest. And I just decided, we need to get to know each other as people, and we need to be able to work together in whatever ways we can, and that's what I did. And so I felt that there was tremendous richness in working with men, even though I knew it was very odd to know they didn't accept me as a priest and they would never invite me to preside or possibly even to preach. But at the same time, I felt, well, the one thing I can do is to be with them and to just do as much as we can together. I don't pride myself in thinking that I can change anyone's mind, but what I can say is that men I've known who have changed their mind about women priests have done so usually from an experience of a relationship, of getting to know someone more than reading a book, you know, and deciding that theologically they've changed their mind.
Is that almost all of my role models in ministry have been gay priests, and therefore it's never been something peculiar to me. One of the things that is peculiar is the fact that so much of it is still closeted, both prevalent and never spoken of. And in the context of the living and loving faith process that the Church of England is engaged in at the moment, is how we can participate in that with a greater degree of honesty and vulnerability than has been possible in the past. But I do think that that women, gay men, others who have had to navigate paths of being included and excluded at the whim of others, and have always, to some extent, had to justify their contribution to the conversation. I think there probably is something useful there about how one can exercise a careful, helpful, edifying priesthood, where one doesn't take one's contribution, one's words, one's presence for granted, because one is used to justifying and measuring the value of one's contribution in a way that might not be the case from some other more privileged perspectives.
We need to help people to understand why it is important to go back to church physically.
You can do very real things digitally. I foresee, I suppose, that one of the outcomes of all that we've been through might be a greater emphasis on both of those streams. Yeah, so on very good digital, but also on better experiential. The experiential needs to be absolutely immersive.
One moment was being, you know, taking the funeral of a tiny child who died of AIDS, and, you know, the family had no money, and the coffin was almost made of cardboard, and you know, just trying to give dignity, you know. Rhys, you know, after 9/11 and ministering in the pit and being and getting to know the policemen and the firefighters and the policewoman who worked so tirelessly to bring every single piece of human remain home so that they could be buried and blessed. And then just thinking to the last year, getting to know a woman who very sadly died just before her 100th birthday, but thinking about seeing Christ in her, like she was so much a part of our community. She came to everything, and just seeing the love of Jesus just flowing out of her, and what a gift. I mean, to have the cure of souls, you know, what a gift that is.